Hello, this short webinar is the Pilgrim story, Squanto, a Special Providence of God. Well, the first winter was brutal for the Pilgrims. None had lost their life on the trip over, but 50 people died in the first winter, both pilgrims, sailors, and others. 13 of 18 Pilgrim wives died. Imagine that. That number is unfathomable. At the peak of winter, 2 or 3 people were dying a day, and they were burying their dead at night, so the Native Americans they had not yet met and made peace accords with would not know the diminished numbers that they were experiencing. The Pilgrims cared for one another, and they cared for the ship's crew, and it made a distinct impact on the crew. Only 7 people were able to give care to everyone in the middle of this illness. The ship's crew had actually turned cutthroat with each other. Some men were so sick that they were saying they were willing to surrender their will and their goods to other shipmates that would take care of them. The other shipmates would promise that care, and then they would let the person wither away and die. The Pilgrims took that opportunity to care for some of those on the ship, the sailors, that had formerly cursed them, and it made a distinct impact on those sailors, and many placed their faith in the God of the Pilgrims. Well, that winter finally passed, and in March of 1621, about the 16th of March, a certain Indian came boldly amongst them and spoke to them in broken English. His name was Samoset. He told them also of another Indian whose name was Squanto, a native of this place, who had been in England and could speak better English than himself. About 4 or 5 days after that came the aforementioned Squanto. He continued with them and was their interpreter, and was a special instrument sent of God for their good beyond their expectation. He showed them how to plant corn, where to take fish and other commodities, and guided them to unknown places, and never left them until he died. And Squanto's story is rather remarkable in itself. He was the lone survivor of a plague that killed all of his tribe at Patuxent, right now where the Pilgrims had settled. Before the plague, however, Squanto had been captured by a Thomas Hunt, who was taking him and other Native Americans to slaves in Spain. Squanto escaped and went to England, where he learned English while being treated well in London. And he had arrived back in his homeland just 6 months to a year before the Pilgrims came. He was invited by another sea captain to help navigate the coast. And so through God's providential activity, Squanto was protected. He was taken as a slave. What man meant for evil, God meant for good. He went to England, learned English, and then was delivered back to the very spot that the Pilgrims had come to just 6 months to a year before their arrival. Special providence of God indeed. So you have Samoset, you have Squanto, you have a cultural exchange of corn and cultivation going on between the Pilgrims and this Indian tribe. Squanto had helped the Pilgrims, but the Pilgrims helped the Indians by showing them cultivation techniques. They gave them hoes and encouraged them to prepare new ground, and it was after that that the Indians ended up having more corn crops themselves than they had before the Pilgrims' arrival, because of this good exchange between the people groups. Well, since Squanto's tribe was gone, he settled with the Wampanoag tribe upon his return, and the chief of that tribe was Massasoit, who became friendly with the Pilgrims later in that summer of 1621, and ultimately, through Squanto's help, a peace treaty was brokered, one that ended up lasting 50 years. It's also noteworthy that they celebrated Thanksgiving just 6 months after this meeting of Squanto and peace treaty with Massasoit, and later another Indian that had some English, Habamak, came and lived amongst the Pilgrims as a part of being a part of their lives and actually lived amongst them. And he learned English in that process. And so as we move toward the Thanksgiving story, we need to consider the Pilgrims, their first winter, and their meeting of Squanto and Squanto's tale. Is this coincidence or providence? My name's Craig Seibert. Thanks for listening.